Hello, I'm Jacob. You're watching the Preppers Bunker Outdoors. I'm here with actuary Jonathan Wallentine, who has recently uncovered some fraudulent actions from Black Rifle Coffee Company. Please stick around. You're going to want to hear this.
Welcome Inside the Bunker, a Patriots podcast, sponsored by the Preppers Bunker Outdoors, Beach and Tactical, and Exodus Knife and Tool. I would also like to give a shout out to two people that I really like, two businesses. The first is Stand Strong Art. They made this shirt, the 1776 shirt. Stand Strong Art makes Christian-themed warrior apparel and lifestyle gear. The second company is Kami Cleanser Soap. My buddy, who is a veteran, trains people how to shoot, and his wife is making Kami Cleanser Soap. They're really good people. I applaud the current trend of men getting away from crappy chemical soap. However, if you're just buying from another giant company, what good are you actually doing? My buddy's wife makes this stuff. It's really, really nice. So those will be in the description box below. Please check out Stand Strong Art and Kami Cleanser Soap.
Jonathan, thank you for coming back on the show. This is episode 2. Episode 1 was shorter than I wanted. We've got a little more time to talk today. And what I wanted to focus on here today was explaining in more detail what we talked about in the last podcast.
Sounds good to me, Jake.
So the biggest thing at the end of our last podcast was you had talked about, and by the way, guys, if you want to see the first episode of this podcast, you can check on the link in the top corner here. It'll pop up there if you haven't seen it. But we talked about how Black Rifle Coffee in their contract stated that they wouldn't pull stock until they had traded above $20 for 20 consecutive days. And as I understand it, on day 14, they pulled 2.1 million stocks for Evan Hafer. And so what I wanted to talk to you about for the layman like myself is, if I was not afraid of the law, I thought I was above the law, if I wanted to make a whole bunch of money, why would I do this? Like, how does it work for me to break my contract and pull a whole bunch of stock for the company? How do I make that into money?
How does it work? I guess, typically when you break a contract, right? Then there's a counterparty on the other side. A contract, by definition, is you have an agreement between two parties. Mm-hmm. And in this case, the other party is the public, mm-hmm. Including myself, who own Black Rifle Coffee stock. And they breached their contract and took stock. But you're wondering exactly, maybe rephrase the question a little bit. That's effectively what they did, is breach the contract for their own financial gain.
So how do I turn pulling 2.1 million stocks for myself, if I am Evan Hafer in this situation, how do I turn that into money? And why would I want to breach that contract and take the risk? What's the gain here?
Well, that's the funny thing, that the risk is huge. It's huge. That's why no one does it, because it doesn't make any sense. Right. But in this case, if you're just saying, well, how do they actually benefit? It's actually pretty easy. What they did was, if you own a stock, you got to understand that you're a fractional owner in a company. And so in any company, even if it's private or public, you own, let's just say the company is divided up into fourths. So you own 25% of the company. Effectively, what they did was they changed the terms after the deal. So if you own 25% of all the net income for the company, effectively what happened was they then went and changed it so that now you only own 12.5% of the company. They took the other 12.5%, which was your 12.5%. Right? Because you initially started with 25%,
right?
Which is what you agreed to. Well, they took 12.5 of it, they sold it, they got cash for it, and you're only left with 12.5%. When the agreement was that you were supposed to have 1/4.
Right. So basically, there originally was 4 stocks, and he just pulled new stocks out of thin air out of your share of the company. And now
Correct.
there's not just
Correct.
4 stocks, there's 10 stocks or more.
Yep. Like this is making even numbers. So there was, if you have a private company and there's a total of 4 partners, 4 owners, everyone owns 25%. And the 3 partners just got together and just said, you know what? Let's actually take 12.5, which is 1/8, 1/8 of Jacob's piece, and let's go sell it and divide up the money. They sell it, they got the cash, they each still own 25%, the other 3 people do, but Jacob, you only get stuck with 12.5%.
Right.
They end up with their 25% and the money, cash in hand.
So, okay. Evan Hafer pulled 2.1 million stocks. Those stocks didn't come out of thin air. They just divided the company into smaller pieces, and he took a bunch of it for himself right out of his investors' pockets. Won't that really negatively affect the value of the stocks that these people have already purchased, their piece of the company?
Certainly it will. But it takes a little while before the market to actually figure out, exactly what happened. And so, like you said, will it negatively affect? Of course it does, because Black Rifle's share price was at $34 a share. Now you can cut that down because I think it can't even be above 7. I think it closed at $6.54 today. So when they did that, but the idea is that when they took that fraction from the public, they know it's going to go down, but they can sell it off to somebody else and take in the cash, in which case it doesn't offset itself. Right. They end up with cash. And so even though the value of their existing stock went down, their total net worth is still larger.
So now with you saying that, okay, I want to use a pizza analogy. There's 10 pieces of pizza. I own 4. By pulling 2.1 million stocks, he just took a 10-piece pizza and chopped it into 1 million pieces. And you owned 4 stocks before, but now your 4 stocks are a very small piece of pizza. And even if the value of it plummets or takes some time to plummet, there's still a lot more stocks there, which he had taken. But now he has the ability. You said it takes a while for the market to correct, I think. So wouldn't that be like what they call a pump and dump?
Yeah, effectively, a pump and dump is really just a general term for the insiders, the people that know more. So, and by the way, if you own a company, right, and you're not an active manager of said company, and you're just an investor in the company, who do you think knows more about the company? You just own the company. But to be honest, your people taking phone calls from clients, your customer service, your sales team, they all actually know quite a bit more about you do, even if you are the owner of the company.
Right.
So a pump and dump is basically it's a general term, but what it means is that management, the people that know the most about the company, they know more about the company, and then the owners of the company, which is the public, will essentially go and get their stock price high by effectively lying to the public. And then they sell all of their shares before the drop happens. And they convert it into cash while you, right, the unknowing, ends up losing. So yeah, effectively it's the same, it's kind of the same thing. And a good analogy for that would be, it's kind of like if you own a car and you're selling a used car, you probably know more about that car because you've owned it for let's just say 10 years than the person buying it. There's an information asymmetry, is what they say in economics. And so you have more information about the vehicle than the person who's buying it. Now, if you knew that the vehicle was only going to drive another 3 miles before the entire engine blew up, it's pretty shady. That's effectively what a pump and dump is that they know the engine's going to blow up. So what they do is they cash out just before it blows up at the expense of you.
Wow. And
which is illegal.
at the expense of existing shareholders, but also of the shareholders that they're selling to.
Correct.
At everybody's expense except for their own.
Except for their own.
That 1/10 piece of pizza was worth $5. You just chopped it into 100 pieces, and you still sell one of those 100 pieces for $5 before people realize, like,
Yep.
hey, this isn't a 1/10 of a pizza. This is a 100th of a pizza.
Right. And you're right. I mean, they're selling it to other people that don't know the truth. You know what I mean? What they know.
Wow.
Which is the car's only going to run another couple miles before it blows up.
Right. Wow.
You know what I mean? So ultimately there's got to be a buyer on the other side. And so that's exactly what they do. They use their inside information. That's why it's illegal. I mean, that's why the SEC has rules in place. But in the case of Black Rifle, proving pump and dump, certainly, yeah, that's obviously, the layman would say that's what they did. But they went even way beyond that. I mean, they didn't have the contractual right to the stock in the first place.
Right.
They just breached their contract and did a pump and dump. I mean, it's just like, so when you lay out those facts, it's like, you don't even have to go convince a judge that, you know what I mean, they knew more than the public knew, or any of these kind of ambiguous topics, because just, being an actuary,
right,
I don't like ambiguity.
Right.
Okay. I'm a mathematician. I stick to the facts. When there's any kind of ambiguity, it's kind of like, you don't really know. There's nothing ambiguous about the Black Rifle contract and what they did. It did not trade 20 days above $20. That's a fact. Well, so that's very easy to prove in court. Any jury will be able to count to 20. Right. And so I took the lead for the public, because, they're at a disadvantage.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
Who's going to be able to pony up the kind of cash to go after Black Rifle for screwing over the public? And I think that's what they were banking on.
Well, and most of the public wouldn't even know, even if you put the information right in front of them, which is why I'm so glad to have you here breaking it down for us. And really, it sounds like a lot of fraudulent trading. Like these people, they're stealing, they're criminals.
Yep. And I think they're the worst type of criminals, to be honest.
The rich and powerful criminals.
Yes, exactly. The impact that they have is horrible. And you can see why it's so bad, because, even so I file a securities, fraud lawsuit against Black Rifle Coffee, which is, a no-brainer. But then they sue me for telling the truth. So they sued me in Delaware, and I was in court yesterday morning they tried to file a restraining order. Actually, Glenn Willing tried to file a restraining order against me, and which is like, I can't be, because I was threatening his life. I don't even know what the guy looks like.
Right.
Okay. If that which the restraining order was completely denied by the judge, but let's just say, for example, the judge actually did impose that restraining order. You know what would happen? If you have a restraining order against you, number one, it limits your First Amendment right to speak about that person, and it also limits your Second Amendment right. The first question they always ask you when you pick up a firearm is, are you the subject of any current or pending restraining orders? So your rights are completely deprived. That's actually what Glenn Welling and Black Rifle attempted to do.
Wow.
And I literally was in court yesterday, and it was just bizarre, because I'm just thinking, like, that's a lot of power to take away. I mean, I don't even think I've had a speeding ticket since I was 18, right. Let alone a criminal. And him claiming that he's endangered from his life when I don't even know what he looks like. Okay. Right. I literally was sitting there like, I'm gonna kill someone. I don't even know what they look like.
Right.
And so it's just constant harassment, and it's worse than someone coming up and pushing me or shoving me or even punching me. I'd rather the guy just punch me in the face than I'd swing back.
Right, exactly. Well, that's what these guys are doing, is they are hiding behind any amount of law or power or anything they can put in between themselves and justice.
Right. I'd much rather just throw down.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. I
Yeah.
would much rather run just man to man. You got problems with me? I don't even know what you look like. But to basically cost me, you know what I mean, $250,000 in attorney's fees, etc., to get justice, that's pretty pathetic. And not only that, but there's people that actually really do need justice. There's a person there that, and I can tell you, I actually talked to him. He had a 3-year-old daughter, but he was in the courtroom and he had filed a restraining order against someone who was on parole.
Wow.
And he was kind of like a gangbanger. I talked, you know what I mean? He's from Santa Ana. I could see the teardrop, you know, but he actually was trying to go through the court system, not, you know, retaliating because this guy got out on parole. And here I am sitting in court because Glenn Welling is abusing the system while this guy literally is trying to protect himself and his 3-year-old daughter. But he could hit the streets. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
But he's doing the right thing. And Glenn Welling is just taking up the time of the court and burning people's money for his own personal benefit. So think about what kind of harm that causes.
Well, and I don't want to get too far off topic here, but it's an interesting topic because it's one I've been talking about recently, and that is justice in and of itself. I believe if liberty and justice were to exist, that a regular man should be able to go to court with no representation and tell the truth and win. And
that's ideal, but
it's not helpful.
yeah, judges are former lawyers. Okay, lawyers and judges become congressmen and women.
Mm-hmm.
These people then are legislators of laws. So the system is a little rigged for, you know what I mean, creating justice, because it really is more about money and power.
Yep.
So, but you know, that's fine. That's the chess game that, you know what I mean, I have to play.
Right.
And I knew that's what I signed up for. And that's fine. I'll play that. But at the end of the day, whatever kind of bad setup that you get put in, right? This one is so clear that it was willing to fight for, because they will be found absolutely guilty. And the longer it goes on, I mean, maybe they'll likely be indicted, which is what I'd like to see, because that would be the ultimate justice. You don't just steal hundreds of millions of dollars from people and get away with it like they thought.
Yeah. Well, and what's sad is I've always felt that Black Rifle Coffee helps just enough veterans to be able to advertise that they help veterans. But here, we have Black Rifle Coffee stealing from their investors and their supporters. And most of the investors and supporters of Black Rifle Coffee that I know are military and law enforcement, and they're stealing.
No, they sued a veteran. They sued my father.
Yeah.
Okay. And my father's not bragging about his service. Okay. He was drafted.
Right.
Okay. He's got Purple Hearts. He's got a Bronze Star. He's got, I mean, and by the way, none of it was just all packed away in a briefcase. You know what I mean? In the attic. He didn't wear it as a badge of honor. He just did. He served his country, and this kind of thing, like for him to get served a legal dog to appear in Delaware of all places, by the way. And this is coming from my dad, to be honest. He's like, because one of the attorneys asked me, have you ever been to Delaware? Like, why would they even sue you in Delaware? Have you ever been? He's like, I would never go to Delaware. That's where Biden's from.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he's like, Delaware, but shoot, if I got to go to Delaware to defend which he's going to have to go to Delaware.
Wow.
Because of the lawsuit that Black Rifle sued for slander or libel, which is actually just fact. I'm sorry, the facts are the facts, but they call it libel. And they file it in Delaware, not where the person is. How did he slander anyone in Delaware?
Right.
And he's and by the way, I don't know if Black Rifle, their count of Purple Hearts, or anyway, but my dad has a lot of opinions about Evan Hafer that are quite interesting, like his story about everyone joining to go on his platoon or his squad because he had great coffee. He's like, that's not how it works.
No. Well, you know what's interesting, we were talking about them suing your father. When I made my first Black Rifle Coffee video, they started blowing me up on Instagram and talking about how they're going to burn my business to the ground and all of this other stuff. And I'm like a small time veteran hand making rifle slings in my basement trying to make a living. They're going to burn my business to the ground. And so they filled Facebook up with negative reviews from clearly fake accounts. And you should be able to do something about that, by the way, with Facebook. You should be able to appeal it or be like, hey, review this. These reviews are very clearly fake, but they won't do anything. But anyways, I don't get.
No, they created a whole website. There's a whole campaign. They tried to hack our computers. They actually hacked our PR firm. They've like hundreds of people are leaving messages on all of my legal staff's emails, claiming they want to hire someone for security or a stock fraud. They're like, if we don't get calls, like what is going on?
Right.
So anyone that gets involved in the case is basically a target.
Yeah.
And thank God they're failed, their hack attempts. But no, they even created fake email addresses.
Yep.
The one website they created that's hilarious is 1791 Management Facts.
I saw that actually got posted quite a few times from 3 different trolls on our video.
Oh, it keeps getting posted. Oh yeah, no, on stock twits, it gets posted on Twitter, it gets posted everywhere. And then they actually sent, and have a copy of the email, they sent an email to my staff, okay, like probably, I don't know, maybe 16 of my employees, pretending to be one of my board members because they created an email address, but it was at this I forget what the name of the ending was, but it was like a Swiss, that you couldn't. Anyway, it had his full name in the email, and it came from, and then it was like, hey, did you know this about your boss? And then it had a link to 1791 Management Facts.
Wow, that's pitiful. Well,
and people thought that it was from the board member.
You mentioned board members, which brings me to my next topic here that we had touched on really quick in the last video. There's articles out there about all of these appointed employees and stuff like that have been donating to Biden, donating to Act Blue, but their board members, like George Muniz, are like bad commies, liberals. And so, although, we're not necessarily here to talk about your political affiliations or anything like that. For someone like me, I don't even know how one of these big companies works. I'm just this big, right? And so when the average person, I believe, thinks about a CEO, they think about the very top, like the owner of the company, the very top guy. And that's all that they know. They don't know any other positions or titles or anything like that. So these board of directors like George Muniz and stuff like that, what do they actually do in the company? Like how much power do they have in the company? How are they making money? Like, what are they? How does all this work?
Yeah. So actually kind of going back to what I was saying before about, thinking about owning a stock as, you're the owner of the company, but you're not there day to day working there. And so ultimately the CEO is not an elected, he's not the person that the owners put in charge. The real bosses of any publicly traded company is the board of directors. The board of directors is the ones that the public votes for, but not in the case of Black Rifle, okay? Because they did a backdoor transaction and Engaged Capital essentially underwrote it, which they're liable for, and that'll all come out. But anyway, going back to your question, is that the board is the boss. So the board then appoints who's going to be the CEO of the company, who's going to be the chief financial officer of the company, who's going to be all the top roles in the company. So the way that kind of works is that the public votes for the board of directors, and then the board of director appoints the officers. So Evan Hafer, being the CEO, can easily just be replaced. Who hired him effectively is the board of directors. The board of directors are the ones that represent the owners.
So you've got all these, and again, the political thing, it isn't necessarily your thing, it's my thing. My problem with Black Rifle Coffee has always been politics, but you have this company that is advertising themselves as being incredibly conservative, and in the reality, the people calling the shots and making the money are not.
Yeah, I mean, if you look up the board who runs the company, it's not Evan Hafer. Like I said, Evan Hafer can be replaced by the board tomorrow. Okay, that's a fact. And I think even after I wrote the letter for them to revise their code of conduct, Evan Hafer was actually changed positions. He was actually the chairman of the board. He was demoted from the board, you know what I mean, from the board. So the board of directors is the one who picks who the CEO is. If the board of directors says Evan Hafer isn't going to be running the company, Evan Hafer is not running the company.
Wow.
So at the end of the day, the real people running the company are the board of directors. Now, if you're saying, are they conservative or liberal, or you know what I mean? I can tell you their bios and you know, you can judge there, but like you said, if you just look up their board of directors, which is on their website, I mean, this isn't conspiracy theory. They have to list their board of directors. And why do they have to list their board? Well, frankly, because the owners of the company need to know who's representing them and who's making the decisions for the company.
Right.
So George Munoz is running the company. And so you can look up his bio on Wikipedia. You can determine whether he's conservative or not conservative, if he's left or right. Glenn Welling, since I know him, because he's up the street from me, is definitely not conservative. That's a fact. And also Glenn Welling is the one who put together the entire IPO. So he got the first pick before the shareholders get to vote. So the board is really comprised right now of people that Munoz and Engage hand selected, which are both left wing.
Wow.
So they're the ones running the company. I mean, if you want to, but these are all just facts. People can look them up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, I just appreciate you clarifying how the board of directors actually works, because again, someone like me looks up that someone like George is on the board of directors. And it's like, well, what the heck is the board of directors? You know, it doesn't mean as much if you don't understand what the heck.
No, Black Rifle pays them, and that's who gets the money. You buy Black Rifle a cup of coffee, that money is going directly to pay the board's salaries. They get paid. I mean, gosh, if you were to back into their hourly rate, it'd probably be maybe about $25,000 an hour. Because I think their comp it's north of 100,000 for each board member. And so Munoz, they have to sit at 4 board meetings a year, you know. So if you just divide it by 4, you get about north of 25 grand. And I don't know what he's doing with the, you know, his $25,000 an hour rate, but it's probably certainly not to support conservatives, since he was an appointee to the Obama-Biden administration.
Well, it just, I guess, makes sense. It makes sense with all the money that Black Rifle Coffee has donated to Biden, to Obama, to Tulsi Gabbard, to all of these people. And I know Jared Taylor has donated to a few veteran politicians who are running, but he donates heavily and is very involved with Dan Crenshaw. And not to waste your time with this, I'll do another video on this another time, but you know, you can only wave the American flag and talk bad about socialists while pushing taking people's guns without legal process for so long before people are like, hey, dude's a freaking communist.
Well, that was what Black Rifle tried to do to me.
Right.
I mean, if that restraining order, which is completely baseless, but you know, thank God.
Yeah.
I mean, it was denied. Everything was denied. I mean, basically the judge was like, get the F out of my courtroom.
Well, here's the
You know,
problem.
but thank God. I mean, because when I walked in there, you know what the courts have too is they have. I actually have a picture of it on my phone. They have the Bill of Rights, they have the Declaration of Independence. You know what I mean? They typically have a lot of memorabilia about America, right, in the courtroom, because this is a place for justice. And the fact that they would actually do something like this. So, I mean, I don't even know what the guy looks like. Is all I can say.
Right. Well, and just
and by the way, if it was granted, though, I'd be stripped of my rights.
Well, and so the law works. We talked about lawyers, then judges, then legislators. These people are protecting themselves. If they make a red flag law where they can take your guns without any court case, due process, anything, they're the ones. If they feel they're the ones in power here, if they're the ones that can pull the right strings, they could have just walked into your house and been like, "Hey, red flag order, you're giving us any gun you have." And what that does, a red flag law is just an opening to get good people killed. You go kick in some person's door without any legal grounding to forcefully take their guns, and law enforcement
I think
officers.
that's illegal.
There's
There's search and seizure, right?
Right.
Is that an amendment?
But that's what, of course, that's what red flag laws are trying to get around. They're trying to get around the Second Amendment and the search and the seizures. So
it's kind of funny. I mean, maybe it seems like I lean a certain way. I'm just a very factual person. I mean, we fought a war for independence,
right,
from our own government at the time.
Exactly.
Britain. And there was bylaws, just like company bylaws, just like contracts, just like, for a living, we have staff that goes through and reads all the fine print on all the stuff, you know what I mean? All the contracts. So it's kind of the same thing, even when I think about, just my logical mind is like, I think about, well, America itself, it's like, well, there was a charter that was written down, and whether you agree with it or disagree with it is immaterial.
Right.
It is what it is. You can't wash it away. Just like you can't say, "Oh, I'm sorry, Jacob, that, we initially talked about you owning 25%, and that's what we all agreed to. But, we just decided that you don't own 25% of the company anymore. You only own 5%. Right. You're like, wait, what just happened here?
Right. I paid
the formation, the agreement was there.
Right.
Okay. So it's not really debatable whether or not, you own 25%. If they breached it, it's illegal. I mean, that's why we have a system of law and order. That's why there is an economy in the United States. There's a free market economy where people have trust of even investing in companies, and it actually is kind of the epitome of free market forces and capitalism. There is no stock market in the Philippines. Okay. Right. No one trusts it.
Right.
There is no stock in China. There's a stock market, but all it is basically a slot machine. You know why? Well, because no one trusts it. It's just a gambling machine, because there really isn't any confidence that there's law and order. So the one thing that a government does is to make sure that agreements between parties, property rights, etc., abuse, you know what I mean, is that's their job, and that's written in the doctrine, right? Basically the charter, the contract of the formation of the country. Right. So I don't have to be political or be right or left to read.
Right. And to know when you and other people are getting screwed, and there needs to be repercussion.
That's really the only thing the government's there for. It actually specifically says that. I mean, so
well, it's crazy. First we had Rittenhouse and this scandal. Maybe we should call it Coffeegate.
God.
But
Coffeegate. Yeah. I mean, you know what? Look, there's coverage. It's getting picked up. Black Rifle stock's going down for a reason. Investors don't have confidence.
Right. Right.
Okay, so that's the one thing that's the beauty of markets is like even if you break the rules and the judicial system isn't right there to back you up, you know what I mean? People get it.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's a reason why Black Rifle coffee is down 80% from its high. There's a reason, and it's because investors have zero confidence that if you're going to breach a contract or do something, should you really even be managing a company that I own? No, I'm going to get rid of it.
Right.
So the market's voting as we speak.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I mean that's kind of that's what's happening.
Well, Jonathan, I really appreciate you coming on here and explaining this to me. I'm excited to see where we go from here. I'd love to have you on again to explain some of these things that just are not very accessible to a guy like me. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'll stay in contact, and I see your La Wow shirt there. I'm going to put a link to La Wow in the description box below because it is going to be the source of some fantastic videos coming up here soon.
Well, the one thing is at least go to law and type in BRCC, right? Or Black Rifle Coffee, because Law Wow there's no opinions, no commentary. It's just fact. And you'll be able to see kind of the battle happening live.
Yep.
And you can read for yourself, whether you agree with me or disagree. I don't, you know what I mean? I think America is about debate.
Yep.
So
and transparency.
But you have to have the information.
Right. Exactly.
So, yep.
Well, we'll check that out again. Thank you so much. I hope that you have a great evening, and I hope to have you on here again in the future.
All right. Sounds good, Jake.
All right. Talk to you later.
All right.